The United States has hit a grim financial milestone. For the first time since World War II, our national debt is now larger than our entire annual economic output. Public debt climbed to $31.27 trillion by the end of April, and that is compared to the U.S. Gross domestic product, which is $0.05 trillion less. Now, the numbers are from a nonprofit think tank based in Washington, D.C. I want to bring in CBS News business contributor Javier David. Javier, thank you for your time today. So first off, how did we get here?
Yeah, look, we have these record-shattering stock market valuations that we talk about all the time, but it obscures a very inconvenient and very more important development. In short, we just have a spending problem. Runaway outlays in Washington by both major parties. They keep running ahead of tax revenues. There's no even the slightest pretense of reforms that would rein in all of this deficit spending. And we talk a lot in these debates about discretionary and defense spending. But really, most of the heat and light in the federal budget really takes place in entitlement spending. So what we're really talking about is Social Security and Medicare. And the lack of revenue means Uncle Sam's got to issue debt in order to cover all of its spending needs. And we're now at this point where the government is just paying more in interest costs. And that's even outstripping Medicare and National Security. So we have an aging society, costs are spiraling higher, and there's really no guarantee that we can continue to just simply kind of grow our way out of this, or foreigners will continue to finance the U.S. government's profligacy.
And can you help us make sense of the big picture here? Can you talk about the risks associated with rising debt and where that ultimately leads us?
Yeah, look, the term that's being floated around, or refloated really, is fiscal or sovereign debt crisis. And we've seen this usually when we're talking about it, it's in third world countries or emerging markets. But, we have problems here of our own, and that entails borrowing costs spiking above the Treasury's ability to kind of contain the fallout from that, or even just keep the bills paid. And that means bond investors demand a higher premium to hold U.S. debt, and they just have less appetite to do so. So the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget defines it as a crisis, as like this sharp rise in interest rates on new debt that would significantly reduce the value of existing debt. In short, that just spirals further out of control.
Is there any way to make sure this does not spiral further out of control? Is there even an answer to that?
Well, the answer, of course, is, we need to get our spending under control, but there's no sign of that. The Treasury has, the Treasury debt has been losing a lot of what it calls its risk-free allure. People want Treasuries because they're safe and they're liquid, but there are all these risks out there, and investors just are getting much more and more skeptical about paying the bills. And now we have the Iran war, we have tariffs, inflation risks are skewed decisively higher, and it makes bond investors demand these higher yields just to incentivize holding the U.S. debt. And we're rapidly appointing this point of just kind of losing control of the narrative.
Wow, so much to keep our eye on and hope things get better down the line for our kids and our kids' kids. Javier David, thank you so much. We appreciate your insight today.
Thank you.